Welcome into the LSU Sports Insider podcast. Today is Tuesday. It's Tuesday, August the 19th. We're usually here on Mondays, but it is Tuesday, and we are rolling right along through LSU's preseason camp. I guess they're technically still in camp for like another few days here. Is that right?
Yeah, I think you would consider this week camp as well, and they'll be practicing every day through Saturday, and they've got a rest day, and then it's game week for Clemson. We've kind of hit that point in preseason camp where everything's a little talked out, even though I say that as we're about to record a podcast. And we've kind of hit the wall, I should say. There's always that wall, third week of camp. Everybody's just kind of ready for the games to start. That's pretty much where we're at, I feel like, at this point. But LSU still has some things to figure out, some important practices going on over there.
And LSU is going to be in Tiger Stadium on Saturday night scrimmaging, and we'll be allowed to watch that scrimmage. That's going to be the last time we'll see them in preseason camp before the season starts. But yeah, I'm just excited to watch some football. It's time now. I'm ready to get to the games.
Well, it's week zero.
There are actual college football games Saturday, so we've almost made it, and I'm excited about that. I also do think I agree with you that you kind of hit a wall, and we've covered everything, and we can sit here and talk until we're blue in the face. But our topic today is going to be kind of projecting LSU's depth chart, and they're too deep. And the main topic of that, I feel like Brian Kelly dropped, I don't want to say it's a bombshell, but a little bit of a news nugget in saying that there's still competitions. You know, we said coming into the camp, like, oh, the O-line is the spot to watch, and they've got to figure that out. And then there was like this 2-week stretch where, oh, they have figured it out, and these are the 5 guys who are going to play up there for LSU. And Brian Kelly said he was very confident at media days in them, and it kind of seemed like they'd settled. And now very much they have not settled on a couple of the O-line spots.
They still have competition at left guard and right tackle. And the left guard piece is not surprising because that's a spot that I don't think I said that anybody had necessarily won the job. We might have had ideas about who we think would win the job based on past experience and how they looked in camp, that kind of thing, what we'd seen. But it was clearly still a competition going on, primarily between DJ Chester and Paul Mabenga. Brian Kelly added Cohen Eccles to that mix today as well, even though, at least when we've been out there, we haven't seen him getting as much work with the first team at left guard. But the thing that's been most interesting this week is at right tackle. Weston Davis, all through the spring, through the offseason, through the first start of camp, he was pretty settled in there at the right tackle, the redshirt freshman. And yet this week on Monday, Carius Kern is out there getting first-team work with the offense at right tackle. And, you know, Weston Davis is still rotating in, but Brian Kelly says today that that's a competition between the two of them. I think it's one of those things where LSU kind of wants to make sure that Weston is the right person to be at that spot going into the first game. Ori Williams really did not push him. He's not ready to play yet. And so they're going to see here if Carius Kern, who's been at left tackle all preseason, can go over to the other side of the ball and maybe give them something to think about going into this first game at Clemson.
And the way Brian Kelly framed it today, I thought was a little interesting. He said, once again, that they were looking for competition. And he said that throughout camp, that they have competition at a number of spots, like on the offensive line, in the secondary, at the corner, at safety. You know, they have this competition among players because they have more depth this year than they have in years past. And he said that competition has brought out the best versions of some guys because they have to fight for their spot. They have to fight for their snaps. So I think they wanted a competition at right tackle at the start of camp, but based on how, you know, Ori Williams has been playing, according to what he said today, they didn't have the kind of competition they were looking for. So I think based on what he said today, that they're looking to just, you know, use whatever time they have left to create that competition and try to bring out the best in probably both Weston Davis and Carius Kern. But the thing that I really need to figure out is, like, how much of this is we want to make sure, like Wilson said, or how much of it is, oh no, we might have a problem here. You know, we need to try someone else to see if that works. I don't know which one it is.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of come down in the camp that you want to have this figured out. Now they have another week. We don't know. Maybe it's just kind of crossing some T's and dotting some I's. 3 more days of practice, 4 more days of practice before you start Clemson prep in earnest, and you say, let's just give this a glance to make sure we're doing the best thing. Or, as you said, is this musical chairs and, oh gosh, we've got a right tackle, and now all of a sudden we've got to move Kern over there, and you know, you're scrambling a little bit. And I don't know that we get the answer to that until August 30th.
Yeah, we probably won't. The other thing that's interesting that Brian Kelly said today was that even if they, once they kind of pick their starting five, there's still going to be, he said, rotation at multiple spots, and maybe most likely at left guard and at right tackle in games, that they might not just roll out 5 guys like they did when everybody was healthy last year, that you could have a rotation there at left guard or maybe even at right tackle. And I say those 2 spots specifically because center is definitely going to be Braylon Moore. Unless he gets hurt, they are not going to, or just does not play the way that he has in the preseason. He's going to be their center. Left tackle is definitely going to be Tyree Adams, in part because LSU does not have anybody else who's capable of pushing him for a spot. And then right guard is going to be Josh Thompson to start the season. Brian Kelly said today he's locked up that position, which isn't surprising after he transferred from Northwestern. But yeah, Kelly's saying that they could have a rotation there. It's not great, I don't think, that you might have to rotate
that very often.
Yeah, I remember LSU had rotated some guys a little bit in the national championship season in 2019, I think at guard too. But it wasn't, I don't know, this still just kind of adds to that concern, that uncertainty around this offensive line going into the year, even though it was, I think, on Friday when Brian Kelly said that this group is going to be really good. Those were his words. He still feels that way, but yeah, they've got that competition that's continuing out here, not too as we get closer and closer to the opener, and it does. It's sort of a late wrinkle here in camp after, like you were saying, we had said, like, okay, they've pretty much settled this offensive line. There isn't really a ton of competition going. Now they're trying to increase that and make things interesting here with less than 2 weeks to go.
That's why I was surprised by Monday's practice, because you can correct me if I'm wrong, Wilson. Like, it's been Weston Davis all the way through. We haven't seen anybody take a first-team rep other than Weston Davis at right tackle. So it was a bit of a surprise to see any kind of change. We had assumed, going into late last week that the line was pretty much set. You still had that competition at left guard, but we knew kind of how that would shake out. The Carius Kern getting first-team reps adds a new wrinkle to it. I know y'all talked about it last week, but I thought it was notable that Brian Kelly kind of went out of his way to say that this offensive line is going to be really good, because that's something he didn't have to do. He could have just gave the answer, of, hey, I like the progress they're making. I feel really good about their development. We work on it every day, blah, 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 blah. No, he said, I know what a good offensive line looks like. I've coached NFL offensive linemen, and this is going to be a good line. So he really put himself out there. He didn't have to do that, and he did. I thought that was notable. But it just seems like the way things are happening on the field and the substitution patterns doesn't really jibe with what he's saying in the press conference. And that's kind of where the conflict is there.
Yeah, I think Weston Davis is kind of the focal point of this discussion. And I'll explain why in a minute, but I am remiss on a little bit of housekeeping. I should have mentioned at the top that the LSU Sports Insider is brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. Command the road in a Cadillac where luxury, power, and presence come together. Experience it today at Jerry Lane Cadillac. But Weston Davis, redshirt freshman, I mean, if he had locked down this right tackle spot, we're not having this discussion, right? Have you guys seen anything from him, even during that period where we thought the O-line rotation was solidified, that made you think, I'm not sure about this redshirt freshman here?
You watched one-on-ones last week, didn't you?
Yeah, a couple, I think in the team periods, a couple procedural penalties, a couple false starts is what really jumps out. In the one-on-ones, he's held his own. I think he's fared well against LSU's edge rushers. There's nothing that really jumped out at you saying that, oh, this is going to concern, oh, he's not playing well, because usually when it's bad, you can tell, it's in those one-on-one type of situations, you can tell if it's lopsided one way or the other. It hasn't been. He's been fine. He's been good. Nothing really jumps out, and that's a good sign for an offensive lineman. You want to be talking about them as little as possible. So nothing really jumped out. Maybe a couple false starts here and there that kind of got him frustrated, and LSU coaches frustrated, but nothing too glaring that I saw.
There was a false start that I think you're referencing early last week maybe, where LSU was working in the red zone. He jumps. LSU has to back it up, and then so they took him out, made him run or something like that, and put in Ori Williams at right tackle, and then Garrett Nussmeier throws a touchdown to Xavier Thomas on probably, I think, the next play. And so there has been like that. But there was also a day early in camp that I remember being really impressed by Weston Davis. It was kind of right. It was early. Like LSU wasn't even fully in pads yet at that point. But he had some good blocking reps because LSU at that point was still starting to get pretty physical. And he did a good job in pass pro. it's just, I think it's one of those things where this is a guy who's trying to be a first-time starter. He's a redshirt freshman. He didn't play, but in 4 games last year, no starts. He was a highly thought of recruit coming out of Texas. He's a big guy, but he just hasn't really done it very much. And so you're seeing inconsistencies, and that's I don't think a surprise, but it's also not the most encouraging thing. It's not like he's looked like the guy who will probably compare LSU tackles to for a while, Will Campbell, kind of looking really solid right away as a freshman. Like, he still needs to continue to develop, and that's kind of what we've seen out of him in camp, is some inconsistency there, where you see moments where you think, okay, yeah, this guy can be a solid starter, and others where maybe he isn't quite ready yet.
Yeah, he was a top 150 recruit according to 247 Sports composite ranking. So he's a big time recruit. So the potential is there, the size is there. The talent is there for sure. I think we should also quickly mention Carius Kern, the guy who's theoretically competing for his spot. We were talking to Tyree Adams one day in camp, and he said, notably, I think that Carius Kern is the strongest freshman he's ever seen, the fastest freshman he's ever seen. So clearly there's a lot of potential there. But again, he's a true freshman, and those guys rarely ever start or play significant snaps in the SEC.
The other thing, real quick, this tells us about LSU's offensive line is that it has multiple guys who it thinks could play at guard, especially because like Paul Mabinga played in games last year, and he needs to get a lot better than he was last year, but he played in some games. DJ Chester started a full season last year. Another guy needs to get a lot better, but has some experience, and it feels good about Moore and Thompson, and even Cohen Eccles is still in the mix. You've got a little bit of a group there. That's not the case at tackle. Ori Williams was one of those top backups, and Brian Kelly is basically saying he's not ready yet. So you've got Tyree Adams, you've got Weston Davis, and they're trying to see what Carius Kern can do here. Brian Kelly mentioned today that DJ Chester has even taken reps at tackle. He's been a center or a guard as much as we've ever seen him at LSU.
And he's the second team center. If anything happens to Braylon Moore, theoretically they're going to slide DJ Chester in at center.
Essentially, LSU really cannot afford an injury to one of these tackles, especially not Tyree Adams.
I mean, that was exactly what I was going to say, is that things will get real interesting when you throw an injury into this mix. And the versatility is important, but you also don't want to start putting square pegs in round holes on this O-line. But I'm glad you said that, Reed, because I was going to mention that too. The flip side of this is maybe that Carius Kern has looked good enough in the competition at left tackle, but maybe just not good enough to claim the starting job, to where LSU said, hey, why don't we flip him to the other side and see if he can push Davis for that job? I mean, that's the glass half full take here. I mean, maybe that's the case.
Yeah. We'll see. I think, preseason, it's a tough time to evaluate line play. We won't know for sure until Clemson, until August 30th. So we'll see how it shakes out. Obviously, the offensive line needs to be better in the run game for sure. LSU is counting on that. And the thing that's flown under the radar is how good the LSU O-line was last year in pass protection. Garrett Nussmeier had a lot of time to throw, and if that's worse this year, then things could get dicey for the offense. It needs to be close to that level of pass protection that the line had last year.
That's why I just feel like this discussion, I know we've had it before, but man, you look at the rest of this offense, and we're about to get into the too deep predictions for the rest of the offense, but like, if you have a line, this could be a special offense. Maybe not 2023 level, but something close to that. Like, I mean, you look at the skill position players. You obviously have Nas at quarterback, who's could be all-world Heisman contender. But if the line isn't there, if the line is slipshod and you're moving pieces around and everything, then that kind of downgrades everything.
Yeah. Should we get into too deep?
Let's
talking about these guys?
Let's go into the rest of the offensive too deep here on the LSU Sports Insider podcast. It's brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac, and some of these spots we're just going to zip right through. We can go through the backfield real quick. We do have an injury report on Michael Van Buren coming up, but Garrett Nussmeier's the starter. If we're worried about Michael Van Buren injury reports, then things have gone off the rails because Nuss is the starter, and then at running back, Caden Durham's the starter. Like those backfield spots are settled, have been settled.
Yeah, the one thing I'll mention about the running back spot is it's going to be interesting to see if how much LSU spells Caden Durham. How large is his workload going to be this year? That's usually a position where you try to have at least a little bit of a rotation. And, what can you get out of Caleb Jackson this season? Is he going to be better than he was as a sophomore? Is Harlan Berry ready to play as a freshman? That's unclear. We've seen LSU giving Harlan Berry a lot of work. We know he was the number one running back in the country, a 5-star player. Like they're going to try to have him have some kind of role in this team, but what can he handle as a freshman remains to be seen, because it's not like he's necessarily popped during preseason camp. And then Juwan Johnson is a part of that equation as well. What is he going to do after spending most of this offseason playing quarterback, but he's a natural runner of the football. So that's just, I think, the most interesting thing to me at that position is what does LSU do behind Caden Durham, because he's not going to be able to take every single snap there.
I think Juwan Johnson's going to be more involved than we think. We touched on this the last time I was on the podcast, Zach. We've seen him get in the mix, and if Caleb Jackson, for whatever reason, hasn't taken that step forward that we've seen him get close to taking, then Juwan could be more involved in the offense. Because when you think about you want, if you're going to have a guy spelling Caden Durham, ideally you're going to want to have him as a pass catching threat, and I think that's what Juwan brings to the offense. He's got good hands, he can run routes, he can catch passes, and he can pass protect as well. So you need to have that kind of complete option to spell Caden Durham. We're not sure if LSU has it, but I think he'll try giving Juwan Johnson some touches, see what he's got.
I'm a little bit more skeptical than Reed of how big of a role Juwan will have, but we'll see how it shakes out. I'm not sure how good of a pass pro guy he is yet.
But either way, this does not feel like the timeshare situation it has been in the past couple of years. Like, it seems like Caden Durham is going to get the lion's share, assuming he's healthy, the lion's share of the touches here. If you had to guess right now, who's second? Who's RB2? Is it Jackson or is it Berry?
It's probably Jackson at the moment because he's the older guy.
For sure.
But it's one of those things I think over the course of the season, as Harlan Berry gets comfortable and maybe as Juwan Johnson shows more of what he can do, then maybe that changes. I think as you go into game one, it's Caleb Jackson.
Well, speaking of seniority, I think at wide receiver, this discussion becomes pretty interesting, but you published your projected depth chart at theadvocate.com/LSU.
What a great website.
Yeah, you can read that. It is a great website. Check it out. Subscribe, all of that good stuff. You can catch replays of this podcast on there if you're not a YouTube person too. You picked Chris Hilton, Xavier Thomas, and Aaron Anderson as your starting wide receivers. You've got 2 seniors there, plus a redshirt junior in Aaron Anderson. These are the experienced guys. These are the guys who have played before. There's obviously a ton of talent behind them, starting with the transfers, Nick Anderson and Barry and Brown. Do you see any scenario at which, maybe these 3 guys start week 1, but by week 6 or week 8 or week 10, they're not the starters?
Yeah, I could absolutely see that happening. I've put them in that order because that's sort of just what we've seen during camp. Is usually with the first team offense, it's those 3 guys. Not only are they experienced players, they've also the ones who have been at LSU now for at least a season. And that's something that we usually see going into the first game, is the guy who has been there usually gets the nod if all else is equal. And LSU trusts all 3 of them. The one thing that could throw a wrinkle in that is just if for some reason Aaron Anderson, he has been limited at times here in camp. If he still was, we don't to the best of our knowledge don't think that he is. But that would maybe change things. Maybe Kyle Parker, who's been getting a lot of reps, and when Aaron was out at the very start of camp, would maybe get some playing time there. But Barryon and Nick are going to get a lot of work in this offense. They're going to be a heavy part of the rotation, even though they might not be on the field for the first offensive snap against Clemson. Like, they are going to have a good chance to probably work their way into that role because LSU's going to use them a lot. And that's one of those things that could kind of just shake out as you finally get into games and start playing other teams and guys, who meets the moment, who's able to kind of take over a game. Does LSU have a wide receiver who can do that? Then those things could definitely shake out. I could see who's starting game 1 not be the same week to week. And certainly not by like mid-season. That could definitely shift.
It's going to be heavy rotation either way, and usually when these types of things, when you have a lot of mouths to feed on an offense, the cream generally rises to the top. The best guys are going to earn their targets. You can go back to the phrase, snaps are given, but targets are earned. Receivers, the guys who are good at getting open, the guys who are good at coming down with contested catches, those are the guys who are going to be targeted the most. So if you're looking at a guy like Aaron Anderson in the slot, he'll have opportunities to get himself open in the middle of the field, or a guy like Nick Anderson who can win in the red zone and use his size to his advantage and come down with contested catches. It just seems like LSU has a lot of different options, and it just feels like each guy will be used in kind of a different way. You've got your deep threats with Chris Hilton, Barryon Brown, and then you've got kind of your smaller kind of slot guys like Aaron Anderson and gosh, I'm not who am I?
Kyle Parker.
Kyle
Yeah,
Parker's
so-
the guy we hadn't mentioned.
Yeah,
yet,
so it's just like, how are the targets going to be distributed? Who's going to be the top guy getting the first look from Nussmeier? Who's going to be the go-to guy? We don't know yet, but we know it could be any of those guys.
That's what's going to interest me the most is who is that go-to guy? Who's the Kyron Lacey from last season who you just know you're going to throw a back shoulder fade to because you have a matchup you really like again overtime against Ole Miss? I don't know who that guy is necessarily yet. And, I mean, Bauer Sharp and Trey'Dez Green are part of that mix, too. To Reed's point, there's so many mouths to feed. It leads me into this question for both of you guys. Do you think that LSU has an 1,000-yard receiver this year?
No, I don't either. I think it's one of those offenses, and this can be a good thing, by the way, where depending on the matchup, and the scheme that you're facing, like maybe 1 week Chris Hilton gets his hands on a couple 40-yard catches, and he's the one with a 100-yard game. It might be Barryon Brown the next week, and then maybe Kyle Parker or Aaron Anderson has a mismatch in the slot the week after that, and they make 10 catches for 100 yards. I mean, like, that's going to be the type of listen, that's hard to defend, right? I mean, I don't know about you, Reed, but I don't think any one guy, like, that's the flip side of who's the Kyron Lacey who you go to on a tough fourth down in overtime. I'm not sure, but I also don't know who the defense keys on.
Yeah, or who's, you need a touchdown at the end of the Ole Miss game and you have a tough third down. Who's your Mason Taylor that you go to, to either get open or come down with a big catch? We don't know who that is, and I know we're gonna get to the tight ends, but
Nick could be Nick Anderson.
Nick could be that guy.
Yeah.
But you get to the tight ends, and we're gonna talk about them, but Trey'Dez Green and Bauer Sharp are two more mouths you got to feed. So we've talked about 8 different guys. I don't know how the targets are going to play out. It's probably going to change from week to week.
And I was thinking kind of on the way over here about that very question, could it be a problem if LSU doesn't have just like one singular receiver who can take over a game, or even two who are kind of just like first round type wide receivers? And then I came around to the thinking that the guy so it's like, who's that one guy who you're going to feature in the offense, or two guys you can feature and rely on and all that kind of stuff. And like, I kind of came around to the thinking that guy's Garrett. It's probably Nuss. You're just having him control everything,
Right.
Work through all these progression reads, have a bunch of receivers and options that you trust and you like out there, and rely on him to make the best decisions and put the ball in the right place. And year 2 as a starting quarterback, I think that's kind of what I have sort of settled on.
Yeah,
At least going into the season, that's where I feel like it's like he's that guy. He's the featured person on the offense, which is not surprising as a quarterback.
Right, but the lack of a bona fide number one playmaking wide receiver, that holds a lot more glaring if you don't have the experienced quarterback. Because to me, you trust him to make the right read, make the right decision in the game, and all of these guys are good. We know that. I mean, and so I think he's got a lot of good choices out there, and unless you're facing a pass defense that just can swarm you all over the place, somebody's going to get open. You've got good options. So I think that's a good situation. You mentioned the tight ends, Reed. Bauer Sharp and Trey'Dez Green, in my eyes, are almost co-starters. Wilson,
Yes,
I think so too.
I mean, I think Bauer Sharp probably takes the first snap just because he's the better blocker, and generally in a first and 10 from your own 25 situation, you're going to want it to at least appear like you may run the ball, and you put Bauer Sharp out there. If you're in the red zone or if it's 3rd and 5. Then maybe you want more of the passing game threat in Green.
Yeah, we saw just yesterday LSU working through some plays on air in 12 personnel. LSU is going to use more 12 personnel than it has the past 3 years. It has talked in the past about wanting to use 12 personnel, but it never had anybody other than Mason Taylor, this is in the Brian Kelly era, to be able to do that with. And now it seems like they actually have that. Now, Trey'Dez Green needs to continue to be a better blocker. He is so tall that it's really tough for him to get leverage. He's mentally willing to do it to get his hands dirty, but when you're 6'7", trying to get under a guy can be kind of tough. So he's got to keep getting better as a blocker, but he brings so much as a mismatch as a receiver. And Bauer Sharp looks reliable too. He's good after the catch, I think, once he has the ball in his hands. And so I think they've got some good players there at tight end, and that's something to be, I think, encouraged about what else you could do with the tight end in this offense. A lot more 12 personnel this year for sure.
I've been impressed with Bauer Sharp. I didn't exactly have a great feel for what kind of athlete he was when he transferred to LSU, but seeing him in camp, he's faster than I think he gets credit for just because people think of him as like that blocking specialist tight end. He's got real athleticism. He's got real pass catching skills. If he weren't Trey'Dez Green, you'd think. I mean, if he wasn't in a room with Trey'Dez Green, I think his pass catching ability would stand out a little bit more than it does. But those two are really complement each other very well. Bauer Sharp can do kind of anything you want him to do as a tight end. He can run routes, he can block, and Trey'Dez is the guy who can line up in the slot, line up out wide, really be that mismatch problem wherever you want him to be, and he can not only get himself open, but come down with contested catches when you need him to.
Excuse me, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Brian Kelly said today that Trey'Dez Green is what was it exactly they said? Oh shoot, I started quoting him. It was he's always open because he's so tall and has such a wide catch radius.
When he's covered, he's not covered.
Yeah,
when he's like that.
Yeah. Even when he's covered, he's not covered at any time. That was the quote.
Right. I mean, because he'll just head top you. I mean, and I don't care how good you are. But the downside, of course, 12 personnel, for those who don't know, basically just means 2 tight ends on the field. It limits you to 2 receivers. So then you're putting all those talented receivers we talked about. It means only 2 of them can get on the field at that time. So there is sort of a give and take.
Joe Sloan's got some interesting decisions to make.
It's a good problem to have, though, I think. Yeah. This offense, like we said, if the O-line, that's the skeleton key. If the O-line is okay, you could see some really special things.
At his core, Brian Kelly is a 12 personnel coach. You cut him open, he's got 12 personnel inside him. That's who he is as a coach. That's who he wants to be. And I think he wants to run that, and I think he's got the tight ends to do it.
All right, so that's the offense. We will get to the defense after the break. This is the LSU Sports Insider Podcast, brought to you by Jerry Lane Cadillac. We're back right after this.
You know how far I've gone, now I'm home again. I'm feeling more alive these days than I've ever been.
At the Baton Rouge Clinic, our sole focus is to provide exceptional health care for your entire family so that you can get back to doing what you love most. We are caring for generations.
You give me love.
Did they ask you to do the commercial too?
Yeah, but they just gave me one line.
Bet like a Caesar. Like, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna tell them how Caesar's Sportsbook is just so easy to use that you can watch and bet thousands of sports events, even some NFL games.
They'll probably show us betting on our favourite players and teams at all the Vegas hotspots too.
Like, we have time for that montage.
I told him I couldn't do it.
They couldn't afford me.
I think the biggest thing that separates us is our people. We have a really amazing staff that really care about their customers, really care about our product. At Jerry Lane Cadillac, we value trust and transparency above all else. We have a little bit of something for everyone, so whether it be the 2025 Escalade, any of the smaller crossover vehicles, the XT4, 5, and 6, we've also got a wide variety of new EVs, including the 2025 electric Escalade IQ. I think the product lineup right now is the best that it's ever been in Cadillac.
Welcome back to the LSU Sports Insider for Tuesday, August the 19th. Zach Ewing here hanging out with Wilson Alexander and Reed Darcey, a couple of our advocate writers covering LSU football, which of course is just 11 days away now from opening up against Clemson as we continue the countdown almost into those single digits. We're going to have our full LSU season preview podcast coming up on Thursday, so make sure you check that one out. We're going to give our predictions and how far we think LSU goes, big picture things, all that sort of thing. Reed's not going to be on that show, so we may ask him a sneak preview.
I got it locked and loaded.
Yeah, give us those at the end of this show. But we're going to continue with our look through LSU's 2 deep here. First, our quick injury report. Our injury report is brought to you by the Baton Rouge Clinic, your trusted healthcare provider in the heart of Baton Rouge. Whether you're in need of primary care, specialist services, or urgent care, the Baton Rouge Clinic has you covered with a team of dedicated and experienced professionals. Visit BatonRougeClinic.com to learn more or to schedule your appointment today. The Baton Rouge Clinic, caring for generations. Short injury report, luckily for LSU. Michael Van Buren, backup QB, jammed his finger. Guess he's going to be fine. Harold Perkins and Whit Weeks both missed practice, but that was more load management than it was any new injury.
Harold Perkins had a personal day, Brian Kelly said, and was able to practice on Tuesday, so no reason for concern there. As you said, Van Buren jammed his finger. As I understand, it kind of came down on somebody's helmet during the scrimmage on Saturday. He had his fingers either in a splint or taped up kind of thing on his throwing hand yesterday when we were at practice on Monday. So it was kind of like, oh man, what's going on there? But Brian Kelly says he'll be practicing and throwing on Wednesday, and so it doesn't sound like any real cause for concern with him. And then and that there was no damage. They did X-rays and an MRI. And then with Weeks, that's kind of the interesting one because, like you said, load management. He has not practiced. He didn't practice on Friday or on Monday, but Brian Kelly said he was practicing was going to practice in the scrimmage on Saturday. You're getting close to the first game here, so that's a little bit concerning. But I still feel like it's, I don't know, maybe like a 3 on a scale of 1 to 10, and that's probably being just like overly cautious kind of thing. Like I talked to somebody today who said that it's really just about like making sure he is ready to go, no limitations for that first game against Clemson. We haven't heard anything contrary to that yet, or seen necessarily anything contrary to that yet. So no reason to cause the alarm or sound the alarm on Weeks. It's just unless we see something different. It's just sort of continued, like you said, load management is what the Brian Kelly is saying as he comes off that ankle injury to make sure that he is full go for the season.
Yeah, I think the timing makes sense. If you're going to give a guy coming off a major injury, give him a rest day. You don't want to do it game week. You probably don't even want to do it right before this last scrimmage. So, giving him Monday makes a lot of sense to me. So that checks out. All right, speaking of Weeks, we're going to go through our defensive depth chart here. We'll start up front, guys, on the line. What do we got? A lot of transfers.
It's going to be a rotation. Brian Kelly was talking today, and he has multiple times throughout the offseason. This is nothing new about the depth that LSU has defensively. He feels like it is much improved from where it was the past 3 years, and it's easy to see why he thinks that. You start at the edge. I mean, I think the starters are probably going to be Gabe Relaford and Jack Pyburn. That's at least what we've seen recently. But Patrick Payton is somebody who is certainly going to be in the mix for one of those spots. Maybe it ends up being Payton and Pyburn or something like that. We've just seen a lot of Relaford throughout this offseason. He's somebody who looks like he's going to be ready to play a lot more as a sophomore. And then Jamari Butler, will be in the mixes there as well. I'm really not sure what LSU has in Patrick Payton yet. I was hoping to get an idea in the preseason. I don't have any clue. But he's certainly going to be a big piece of what they do.
Neither do I. That's the one thing I wanted to look for at the start of preseason camp, just to see if he popped athletically or if he flashed at all. And he really hasn't. He's spending a lot of time with the second team, I think Brian Kelly has said, because he's kind of learning new techniques, learning new approach to pass rush, I suppose. And so LSU is bringing him along slowly. He's a big question mark because he had that really good 2023 season, and he took a step back in 2024 as his entire Florida State team did. So which version of him will you be getting? The one who can get 7 sacks in a season or the one who gets closer to 3 or 4? We'll see. Right now it seems like he's on that second team behind Pyburn and Relaford, but again, there's going to be rotation just like there is on the edges and in the interior, where there's really 4 guys who are going to be coming in and out on that LSU D-line.
And those 4 are at the top, Bernard Gooden and I think Dominic McKinley.
Yeah.
Because McKinley's, but Gooden's kind of your guys, he's only like 268 pounds. He's 6'1". He's on the smaller side. So then you pair him up with probably McKinley, and that's a guy who's huge, gotten over 300 pounds and all that. Will play a little bit maybe more of your nose tackle with Gooden as a 3 technique, and then right behind them you've got Jacobian Guillory and Ahmad Bro. Again, though, it's sort of one of those things where it's like even if one of them's a starter, like it's kind of 1A, 1B. Like those 4 are gonna rotate a good bit. It looks like. And especially because you don't want Bernard Gooden he's got a quick get off. He seems to be good for 1 tackle for loss per practice, at least certainly through the first 2 weeks of camp. But you don't want him in situations where he's getting double teamed too much. In a short yardage run situation, like you might have some other guys out there kind of thing. And so that's why I think you'll see LSU do some different things with those interior defensive tackles because to try to put them in situations that will be best for their skill sets.
And on top of that, Blake Baker wants to be multiple, right? You have different kind of pass rush packages that he mixes in there. We've seen Jack Pyburn, for example, lining up in the middle, and Patrick Payton on the edge and Gabe Relaford on the edge. So it's not just going to be 4 guys, and that's what it's going to be. There's going to be different guys moving in and out, lining up in different areas. I think what you mentioned about Gooden is a really good point. because he's a good guy for passing downs, for obvious passing situation, because he can get off the ball really quickly and get into the backfield and try to collapse that pocket from the inside. He's not as good of a run defender as maybe McKinley would be, but he's got that. He's got that good get off, that he can use to rush the pass.
Like a tackle, we've seen tons of tackles for loss. So I feel like he's not he's a solid run defender there. It's just like you don't want him, trying to clog space in the middle.
Exactly.
But,
Eating blocks. Yeah. Something like that.
But he is, I think, good at what Blake wants out of his defensive tackles, which are people who are going to get upfield and create havoc in the backfield. That's what LSU wants defensively under Blake Baker, and he seems to suit that really nicely. He's pretty athletic. And the other thing is just that LSU says it's been getting a lot of inside-out pressure this year on the defensive line in camp. Could that be because the interior of the offensive line is a cause for concern? Maybe, but they also think that Gooden, I think, is a big piece of why they're seeing that, where they're getting more push up the middle, and that he is somebody who they really are really pleased with the pickup that he is, the addition that he has been for this team.
Yeah, I mean, Bernard Gooden's been a revelation out of South Florida. So I think this is the spot of maybe any spot on the roster where you really want to have that depth, because especially Blake Baker wants high energy, high motor from these guys. They're big dudes. If you get an offense that's running tempo or something, they're going to get tired. So I think every time you see the offense sub, you're going to see LSU sub these defensive linemen, and you're going to want those fresh bodies in there. So you need depth there. Moving to the linebackers, the Fortnite defense, I guess, is where we'll start here. Are we going to see 2 Weeks brothers out there?
Yeah, we will. The 2 Weeks brothers are the 2 starters on the interior. And that's pretty cool. West and Witt are the 2 brothers going to be starting. And then are we including Harold Perkins in this mix, or what? Is he a linebacker technically?
It's your call, man. I don't know.
Yeah.
He's
Harold
technically
Perkins is
listed
everywhere.
as a linebacker, but yeah, let's maybe mention him when we get. We'll do its own thing on the star position with Harold, I guess. But he's on the field. Looks like he'll be a starter.
Yeah.
At linebacker, hybrid safety. Yes.
And behind the 2 Weeks brothers are Devon Keys and Tylen Singleton. Correct.
Yep.
2 guys who have shown flashes at time in camp, but it's clear that the 2 Weeks bros are the 2 starters.
Devon played well as a freshman last year, so I'd expect him to be someone else who relies on.
But on the flip side, this is a spot where you will see guys play the lion's share of snaps. I mean, if as long as they're not winded or hurt or something, they're going to be out there. And I mean, if you had to pick a spot where you had a lot of veterans on defense, Perkins and Weeks is a really good place to start.
And I mean, that's the reason that LSU didn't add a linebacker in the portal this year. It trusts the recruiting that it's done over the past couple seasons, especially, and it has guys coming back. I mean, this is why West Weeks took a red shirt last year instead of trying to come back off of his ankle injury in the middle of the season, was to be able to potentially be a starter in a big piece of this team. And that's what he is showing to be there at middle linebacker with Witt, alongside of him. And even Zach, their youngest brother, is on the team. He's not going to have a big role on this team, but especially after reclassifying. But he's there too. I'm sorry, maybe I don't understand the reference. You said Fortnite?
2 weeks.
2 weeks.
2 weeks is a fortnight.
Not the video game.
Yeah, not the video game.
That's what you were thinking.
That's what I thought you said. That's what I thought the reference was to. And I was like, I don't play this game, so I don't know what you're talking about.
My son, who's turns 13 on Monday, plays Fortnite whenever we allow him to. And he would probably listen to that and be like, "What are you talking about, Dad?" So maybe I've just aged myself with that
You're
reference.
making more like Taylor Swift references.
Or like Wimbledon, like the fortnight at the championships.
I understood. I got the reference, Zach.
Right,
probably because we just got off Wimbledon. I was in a
I don't know. I don't know if Fortnite would
whenever my
sponsor the podcast based on that reference, because I'm not sure that generation would get it. But yeah, I tried. All right, in the secondary, we talked about Perkins, who's kind of this hybrid player. You could include him in this group if you want. The other 2 safety spots, I think, probably transfers right now, right, into Marcus Cooley and A.J. Halsey.
Yeah, it looks like those 2 are going to be the starters. Halsey's had a great camp. Everything you've seen and heard about him has been positive. Another one of these spring transfers that LSU brought in, him and Bernard Gooden are both probably going to be starters and key pieces to this team. And then Marcus Cooley also seems to have gotten himself a spot in the secondary there. He played nickel at NC State last year. LSU's got him at one of those deep safety spots. And there's been a lot of rotation throughout the preseason, ongoing competition, even with Deshaun Spears and Javian Toviano mainly being the next 2 guys up. but it seems like Tamarcus Cooley probably has one of those safety spots alongside AJ.
And the thing is, I think this is when it comes into play when LSU needs the safeties to be better in their run defense, especially with mobile quarterbacks. You saw at times where Major Burns or Sage Ryan, they just get a tendency to take poor angles or get lost in space at times. So you really want these guys to just patrol the middle of the field and take smart angles at the quarterbacks and just be the last level of defense and be sure tacklers. That's the thing we know about Halsey, is that he's a good tackler. So I think that they're going to be pretty nice upgrades for LSU. We'll see exactly what the depth looks like behind them, but the hope is that they can come in and just play right away and just give LSU that solid safety play. It's kind of been lacking the past couple of years.
And Jordan Gilbert, I guess, should be included in that mix as well, but he's kind of been a backup star to Harold. But the guy who I think is really promising at star in the future, as we start to maybe look past this season, is CJ Jim Coyley.
Yes.
He's been impressive his first preseason at LSU. That's a name to remember as you go into 2026 and beyond. I mean, he's like 6'3", 220, playing star. It's there's a lot to like there out of what we've seen from him. But for now, Harold will be that player, and he's had a good camp. I think we've talked about it before on the podcast, so we don't need to go over it too much, but it's just been encouraging. It's like, all right, this looks like it maybe is how it's supposed to with him, using him as an edge rusher on third down, putting him in different spots that should be able to highlight his speed, his ability to play in space. He's talking and acting more confidently when we've seen him. And so I don't want to put too any certain expectations on what Harold does this year, but I think it'll be better than it was at the start of last season before he got hurt, and even probably better than he was as a sophomore. And so we'll just see if he can be as disruptive as he was the second half of his freshman year.
He looks comfortable. He looks comfortable, especially when he comes down and tries to make a play in the flat. The flat is going to be his domain, I suppose, where he comes down and tries to blow up, short passes or runs towards there. So the thing is, he looks comfortable. We don't know if that's going to translate to the field yet, but we know in camp he looks comfortable, and that's a positive sign.
And then finally, at corner, another transfer, Mansour Delane, looks like he's locked in a starting spot.
He's cornerback one.
The other side, Ashton Stamps, Jakeem Jackson, where are we at on that?
Well, Jakeem got hurt last week, so that kind of, delayed what he could do in a way. And I think it's Ashton Stamps, at least to start the season. The guy who everybody probably wants to know about is DJ Pickett, the 5-star freshman. He's made some impressive plays, but we've pretty much only seen him with the second-team defense. I have not seen him take starting reps, and so until we do, I don't have any reason to think he'd be the starter game one. And so it seems like it'll be Stamps, and then unless Jackson is maybe who they end up going with instead. PJ Woodland's had a good camp too, but again, it just seems like Ashton Stamps is still fighting for that job and maybe in line to get it.
This, to me, is where the depth shows up the most. The extra depth that the LSU defense has, it shows up the most at corner, in my opinion, because you really got 5 guys who I think LSU likes and I think LSU trusts with a significant role should the need arise for one of them to step into that role. You got Delane and Stamps, and then Jackson, and then DJ Pickett, and PJ Woodland. So that's 5 guys that could theoretically play for you, play starters snaps for you if you really need them to, and that's not something that LSU has had the past few years, especially at the top of that depth chart. In terms of high-end elite cornerback play, I think Zy Alexander was good for the past couple of years at LSU. But when's the last time that LSU just had a corner who is all right, this guy's going to be in the NFL and he's going to have a shot to play in the NFL when he gets there? I look at
Eli Ricks.
Yeah, I look at Mansour Delane and I'm like, all right, this guy is a professional defensive back. He's just got that look about him, the size to him, the physicality to him, and the awareness that he's probably going to be playing on Sundays in the near future. So I think it was Eli Ricks. I remember in 20 and that's a big difference between now and 2023. I remember in 2023 I was talking with our former sports editor Perrin Keys, and we were looking at the cornerbacks and I'm like, there were some comparisons here to 2019 with the returning quarterback and the returning offense, but does this team have the 2019 DBs? Does it have a Stingley or a Christian Fulton?
Short answer.
And he was like, does this team have a Kerry Vincent? And I'm like, I'm not sure this team has a Kerry Vincent. A slot guy who got drafted. So the depth, bottom line, long-winded way of saying that the depth shows up better this year than it has in years past.
Who's the slot corner when LSU needs a slot corner?
I'm not 100% sure. I think maybe Woodland.
Yeah, maybe.
He did it some last year. We haven't necessarily seen the defense in that situation a ton in preseason camp, where they've gone to like a nickel package or a dime. Because, I mean, that's the thing is with Harold at the start,
Right.
that's your nickel.
You're like
in
on a 4-2-5 anyway.
Yeah, he's your sort of extra player. And so it's usually Harold. If LSU were to go to nickel with a true corner on the field or even go to dime, I think P.J. Woodland would be used in that situation. I wonder if they would use like Jakeem or Ashton Stamps in the slot like that. I feel like they're more suited to be outside corners, but I could be wrong.
I feel like Jakeem Jackson might have a little bit of that versatility. Delane definitely does because he's played all over the field. He played all over the field.
But do you
at
want to
Virginia
take
Tech.
him off the outside? That may depend on matchups too.
We've seen we actually now that you mentioned it, we have seen a little. I think saw that at least one day this year or this camp where Delane moved inside and they had two other guys on the outside. Or you could even bring DeMarcus Cooley down if you trusted somebody else to play safety. That's another option.
All right. Those are projections we're projecting. I guess we'll find out on some of those. We just haven't seen in camp, but that's sort of our run through the 2D kicker and punter. Anybody?
Kicker's Damian Ramos. Punter is Grant Chadwick.
All right. There you go. That's about all we need to say about that.
You know what
Chadwick
the most interesting one is?
What's that?
Holder on special teams. I mean, if we want to really get into the weeds here real quick, I just thought this was interesting. Kelly said because he was asked about the holders today, because LSU didn't, and Peyton Todd was not always reliable as their holder last year. He said that it is Grant Chadwick, the punter. That makes most sense. That's usually what LSU does. But they've also got
Colin Hurley.
Colin Hurley, yes, thank you. The third string quarterback. And then Bauer Sharp, the tight end, who has done it some in his career. He was a quarterback at Southeastern. He is also getting some work as the holder. So we're at the point in camp where we're talking about the holders. Like,
if I put a holder on the thumbnail of this podcast, does it double in views? That's what I want to know. Seriously, what the people did come to see, though, is Reed Darcey's prediction. Since Reed will not be on our season preview podcast on Thursday, which you need to check that out. Subscribe to the LSU Sports Insider feed on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of the above. Reed, what you got? What's LSU doing this year?
So you want me to just jump right in and just give it to you, or you got to?
You can take us. You can give us an intro. You can give us the record and then back it up. However you want to take it, my friend.
I think I'll do like a little drum roll.
Okay.
And then we could do. I've kind of gone back and forth. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you. I've kind of gone back and forth between 10 wins and 9 wins, and I think I'm going to settle on 9 wins. 9-3 is what I got. Now I can give you exactly which games they'll lose. I went my time machine and then saw it for you, so I can tell you if you want.
Okay.
I
maybe a spoiler for next week, but I don't know.
Save it for next week or what?
No, go ahead.
Well, now you've piqued my interest. You can't just leave us hanging.
The 3 losses: Clemson on the road at Clemson, on the road at Alabama, and on the road at Oklahoma. I'm kind of high on Oklahoma this year. I think that game, it's the last game of the regular season. It can give LSU some trouble.
That's quite a gamble.
So sorry. That's where my 3 losses come from.
That was a John Mateer joke. If you didn't get
it took me a second. Yes, Venmo Gate.
No, anyway.
Gosh, that would be brutal if LSU's got 2 losses going into the last game of the year.
They're probably looking at a spot. A win gets them a spot in the SEC championship game and probably the playoff, and then you lose that game.
The Oklahoma game is going to be really tough. It's on the road. I like the upgrades that Oklahoma did on offense. I think it's important that they did that, and I think it's going to be a much better offensive team, and I think we can count on them being about the same, kind of defensive team that they have been under Brent Venables. So that's a really tough game. It's on the road. Norman's not an easy place to play, and with all the pressure that could theoretically be on that game, it's not going to be an easy win to get.
No, I agree. I think Oklahoma may be a kind of I don't want to call them a surprise because they're like a perennial power, but compared to what they did last year, I think they take a big step, and that's a tough place to play. So, 9-3 from Reed. who is in your SEC championship game? Does LSU make it with a 6-2 conference record?
No. I think I've got Texas and Alabama
And who
in the
wins?
SEC championship game, and I'll probably pick Texas. I like Arch Manning that much. I know he hasn't shown a whole lot, but I think all the tools are there, and I think he'll have a really good season, and he'll put Texas over the top. When we're splitting hairs between these loaded SEC teams, I usually go with, either do they have returning production or do they have returning production at quarterback, or do they have a quarterback who I really like and who I can really project something forward. And I think Arch is that guy. I think he's going to be good, and I think he'll take Texas over that hump, and they'll win the SEC.
All right. So then your college football playoff teams from the SEC would be Texas, Alabama, and who else?
Ooh, you didn't ask me for this.
No, I didn't. I'm
prepare
putting you on the
this.
spot.
Oh God.
Yeah.
Georgia will get in. I'm gonna need another team. Maybe.
I mean, it could be three.
It could be
LSU
three.
at 9-3, probably right on the bubble, but
Texas, Alabama, Georgia, and I'll just go with Oklahoma. How about that?
You have them beating LSU.
I have them
last
beating
game.
LSU
Yeah,
in the
makes
last
sense.
game, so
Yeah.
I think I'll go with those for the playoff.
Brent Venables saves his job.
Oklahoma and Texas make it to the playoff out of the SEC.
Koki is really
The old
high.
guard would be.
Koki's really high on Florida. I'm not as high on Florida, I don't think, but I do think Florida is going to be better than they were last year, and that's going to be a tough game for LSU to win Week 3 at home.
All
So
right.
what I'm hearing is Reed does not believe in LSU.
And finally,
Yes,
your national champion.
national champion.
2026 in
This is
in
the one
LA
that
this year?
This is the one that I. Where's
Miami.
Miami.
It's in
Yeah,
Miami.
yeah.
It's Miami this year.
This is the one that I don't feel best about out of all the predictions I've given. I think I'm gonna go with Clemson.
Oh.
I think I'm gonna go with Clemson just because I gravitate towards teams with returning quarterbacks. And I
Even though you
think
picked Texas to win the
even
SEC.
I'm contradicting myself here, but I just think of all their returning talent, they're due for a national title. I think they're going to be better on defense because I think they needed to make the change at defensive coordinator, and I think Dabo did a good job there. I think Penn State had a really good run defense this year, and Tom Allen is probably going to do a good job of upgrading their run defense, which they need to do, and there's NFL talent on that defensive line. So they're the most complete team, the most returning production, and the easiest path, by the way, to the playoff. I think they'll probably get in. They'll probably win the ACC and get in, and that helps me feel better about their chances of not only getting in, but going all the way.
So Reed Darcey has stared into his crystal ball, and he has told you that LSU will go 9-3 with 3 road losses to 3 college football playoff teams, including the national champion. In my book, you can claim a national championship for that. I'm just saying.
Huh.
If
Oh
Auburn
my
can claim one
God.
for 1958, okay, which we didn't get to on this podcast, then
We
LSU
could have
can
led the
claim one
show
for
with
that. We should have.
Probably should have.
I mean, what are we doing, Auburn?
I woke up to that this morning and just could not believe it. I mean, it's silly when teams do that. Alabama shouldn't claim as many national championships as it has. But now they're claiming them based off of like these random polls that you've never heard of, and I just think it's really silly. And then they're like, I don't know. Good luck if you're an Auburn fan. Good luck telling an LSU fan that you actually won the 1958 national championship because the basis of your argument is flimsy.
What I just want to know what the point is. Like, if you're an Auburn fan, do you puff your chest out a little bit more, saying, "That's right, Natty in 1958, baby"? I mean, like 2004 national champs. I mean, I just don't. Why? So you can put an extra year up on the wall of the stadium? Like, I don't understand this trend.
Let's claim a podcast award. Let's claim first place in our
Screw those
podcast competition.
Teacher, whatever it was from Lake Charles.
We claim
we're
our,
number
our
one,
title.
baby.
We claim our first place.
It's like UCF in 2017 when they were
The Massey champs or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, they're like, oh, we actually won the national championship. It wasn't Alabama. And it was like, oh my gosh, give it a rest.
We have a playoff now. We play these games.
Instead of the playoff expanding to 28 teams, let's just go back to the poll era and just utter chaos and split national championships.
I will give Auburn half a share for 2004. Like, they were undefeated that year. They didn't get to play for the national championship. That one I can kind of get, where you're like, hey, nobody beat us. We won the SEC. I mean, why? Okay. That one I'll give them half credit for, but some of the other ones are just ridiculous.
To your point, it's like the timing's weird. Why are you doing this now? You're going back and claiming championships that are 50, I think 100 years old in some cases.
Yeah, what?
In 2025, it's like, why are we doing this?
Your grandpa's dead. He doesn't care, guys. I mean, like, I don't know what else the point of this is. So
Maybe it's recruiting.
maybe
Now you tell recruits who maybe aren't looking into it as closely, like, oh, we've won 9 national championships. And then like, oh, give it 5-10 years and people don't know any better. And, maybe that's what it's for.
the off season's over.
Or maybe
But
because they're about to go 4 and 8.
Let's put this in the hopper for next offseason. Which years could LSU claim national titles for that it hasn't already? We could have some fun with that one.
We could have some fun with that one, I
We'll have to
suppose.
get
But I
Rad.
think that I respect LSU for not doing that.
Yeah.
You won 4. You won 4 the way you're supposed to win 4. You're recognized for the 4 that you have. Just that's all it needs to be.
I agree. I also agree that Thursday's show will be a good one. We will have Wilson, Rab, and Koki on that one. You got Reed's prediction today. Come back on Thursday for the rest of them. Until then, Molly Ballinger and Amelia LaCour produced for us today. He's Reed Darcey and Wilson Alexander. I'm Zach Ewing, and this has been the LSU Sports Insider.